everybody, I'm Katallina, and today we are discussing episode 4 of Remonster. This episode was pretty unique because it seems like it's kind of a transition piece between what we've had in the last 3 episodes and what we will potentially have going forward. We focused very heavily on the evolution and advancement of the varying people inside of Gobrou's little goblin camp or village, and we actually had some new members be added, and we had a lot of people get new abilities, which was pretty cool to see. And some of those, of course, went to Gobrou himself. But let's start where the episode did, and let's talk about those elves, because oh my god, I can't speak for every elf, and I'm sure that there are some nice elves in this universe, but the leader of the elves that came to see the goblins was an absolute jackass, and I immediately could not stand him. I was sitting there and thinking, oh boy, Gobrou, what are you going to do about this guy? And initially Gobrou tried to be reasonable. Gobrou let them go. Gobrou figured they'd go and do their thing. And when they didn't, and they came back, and they brought a bigger group, Gobrou webbed them all up, and Gobrou again showed us a practice of goblin justice. This time, he had the elves that he had captured fight against his people, and he set up the fights so that the male elves got nommed, and the female elves got captured. Now, as far as we know at this point in the story, the female elves are still being held in captivity. They are not being abused, they are being fed and everything. But we don't know exactly what is going to go down with them. We do know that Gobrou was thinking that he wanted to keep the female elves alive because they were cute. Now, Gobrou isn't the type to just take somebody and do something to them against their will sexually, so I'm not worried about that, but holy crap, Grandpa Goblin there, the old chief, was certainly acting like a total hornball, and it's like, oh no, 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 no. Now, I don't think Gobrou would let him do anything, but it was definitely awkward. As for that male elf, OMG, I'm so glad that he got nommed by Gobrou because he was a total dick and I immediately despised him. And he put all of his allies in danger by being a moron and coming back. So, hey, nature's law of the jungle, whatever way you want to put it, he got what he had coming. As for the female elves and how they felt about the situation once everything was resolved and they were being kept, and how they were frustrated about the fact that they weren't being let go, I can empathize with them, and I can imagine that they were very afraid of the situation they were being placed into. However, looking at it from a human perspective, by simply going along with what this guy told them to do, by coming to this place and by instigating trouble when there was no reason to do so, they ultimately forfeited their ability to defend themselves from being involved in the situation. I mean, it's a just following orders thing, which is something historically that we know is never to be tolerated because it just leads to people being able to do some really horrid stuff without consequences. So there is that. But I'm sure, given Gobrou's nature and the kind of person he is and the kind of leader he is, that eventually he will find a way to resolve the situation, and that either people will end up moving on or that they will integrate into the new society that he is consciously or not creating. The major theme of the episode, though, seemed to be a focus on evolution, whether of the way that things work inside of Gobrou's society that he's building or just inside of individual characters. On the larger scale, as an example, since we were talking about the elves, we have the reality that the elder who was in charge before Gobrou, when the offer is made by the elves at the beginning of the episode, is like, hey, we should take that, and Gobrou is like, nah, and does not want to take that at all. And he doesn't. And the elder is like, well, that was a waste, but Gobrou is like, I don't want to take that, and it's ridiculous. We also get the addition of some kobolds to the group, which is interesting because partway through the story, we actually see that Gobrou and friends have captured and eaten some kobolds. So there is some potential for history there. But when the kobolds are actually surrounded by the goblins after a situation where the kobolds lead enemies into the goblins' home because they're afraid and they need help, the kobolds actually point out the reality that the goblins are merely following the rules of nature and the rules of the forest, and they actually ask the goblins for their mercy, whether that ends up being eaten or whatever else might happen. They submit to the goblins. We'll talk about that a bit more down the road. Getting into a more personal level of evolution for characters, a lot of characters actually reached new levels or skills in this episode. Gobkichi actually evolved into this red-skinned, larger ogreish kind of thing. He's more wide and bulky and muscular rather than sleek and still muscular but not as over the top than Gobrou ends up being in his form. And the two of them duke it out, and it's pretty fun to see the two of them actually having their sparring matches again, because even though they are both powerful and everything, it's not seemingly done in any such way that Gobkichi is trying to like take over or anything like that. It's simply a friendly spar, and friendly as a spar between two ogres can be anyway. And it's cool to see the two of them doing their thing together. Gobrou does ultimately win because of combat experience, but it's obvious that Gobkichi has definitely made some improvements to what he is and what he's capable of. The redheaded girl that has been the human that spent the most time with Gobrou has also made some advancement in her own skills. She was already known to be a warrior, but it seems like she's actually obtained some kind of specialized class. It comes with the perk of amazing hunting skills, and it comes with the slight downside that she now needs to consume monsters, otherwise she could die. But by consuming those creatures, it allows her to access some really powerful new moves, and she overall seems pretty happy with what's going on. It's actually during this situation that we see her eat part of the kobold alongside of Gobrou, and all of this happens. And it's neat to see that one of the humans is actually advancing despite the fact that they are in this environment, which would normally not really be ideal for them. One of the female goblins who can use magic, I believe it's a hobgoblin, she actually gets a specialized class, and we see her actually get robes, and everybody is really happy for her, and she shows off some of her attacks in the forest, and that was super cool as well. In addition to individual people getting different skills and abilities and advancing in classes or other things like that, we also see the technologies utilized by the goblin village advance as well, which is really good. We see that Gobrou comes up with this idea to make these earrings that can utilize a new skill he's obtained, where he can see using a doppelganger to like get a view of what's going on around him and stuff. So now he can actually like communicate over long range with his people. That's going to prove useful going forward, especially with the risk of war being on the horizon. We see that he's also started to make clothing for people using his blood as part of the components, because his strength can be conveyed through the cloth, which will help protect them. Lastly, we see that Gobrou has obtained a beast taming skill, and we see that he uses it to actually help advance his teammates. One of his members gets a unicorn type thing that they can ride. We find that they're riding a great big bear in a different sequence, and there is actually a wolf pack leader who becomes protector for the human females, and I thought that that was a cute touch, especially considering that now that the thing is tamed and under Gobrou's control, it's completely friendly toward them, and they are sitting there and petting it like it's a large dog. I thought that was cute. One of the things that I talked about last week that I thought was really important is the reality that after the whole Gobrou orgy thing that went down in the camp, I figured there was likely to be some form of consequence that would go on from the other goblins, because there's no way something like that was going to happen and that nobody was going to have any form of resentment toward it, because obviously that kind of thing usually causes a lot of trouble among guys. I mean, it's just human nature. People want to pass on their genetics. That's normal. So yeah, we definitely did see something. It was nowhere near as vicious or as vitrolic as I feared it might be. It was actually rather reasonable. A group of the hobgoblins that were from the generation previous to Gobrou's actually approach him as a group and state that they want to leave the village, or the group, or whatever you want to call it. And they figure that he is going to kill them, and they say that they are prepared to face their death. And Gobrou's like, no, you don't owe me any kind of fealty. You don't owe me any kind of allegiance. You don't have to stay here. I don't own you. And not only does he say that they can go in peace, but he actually gives them a mithril dagger as a parting gift. He then gathers all the other goblins and all the other members of his group, excluding of course the female elves. That would be a different classification, since that situation is totally different. And he actually asks everyone there whether they are happy with his leadership, whether they want to remain, or whether they too would like to go, and that anyone who would like to go should speak now, and that Gobrou holds no ill against them, and that he will actually give them parting gifts. However, none of the people that he gathers in this meeting actually have any desire to leave, but I thought it was super smart that he made sure that he talked to everybody and confirmed that people were actually happy, and that he kind of just took an account of what was going on with his people to make sure that he was being a good leader. Because it's super important that these people actually have some level of confidence in him if he's going to be leading them. It will be interesting to see as the story progresses whether these hobgoblins that left actually will end up causing trouble for Gobrou and friends down the road, or whether the civility under which they left will actually impact things. Personally, my money is on the former, because these are goblins who were not present during the evolutionary process and the building of the new tribe, hence one of the big reasons that they want to leave. These are also the goblins who were responsible for the capturing of the human females that are now allied with us and that are now part of the group in essence. Although I will still continue to criticize the reality that we do not have names for these people, because a name gives you actual personhood and humanity. And I still find that very disturbing. But it is what it is, and that is what's going on with this aspect of the story. Although the episode at large was a collage of different events and activities happening using the day structure I've talked so much about in previous episodes of my discussion series, one thing I will say is that they did a fantastic job of making sure to end the episode with a big climactic activity, which is that there was this situation where a bunch of kobolds are like racing through in abject terror, and the goblins do not initially know what the heck is frightening these kobolds, but Gobrou tells everyone not to attack the kobolds and to let them go through and to flee. And they discover that what's happening is that there is this massive horde of undead that are chasing the kobolds. And initially, the goblins try to fight them directly, and it doesn't really work out the way they would want to. But then Gobrou realizes that they take more damage from blunt attacks, so he actually has people like punching and smashing them instead. And then, once he gets everyone together and they're doing that, and he's telling them all to keep fighting so they will get more XP and advance better, which I find hilarious how they break the fourth wall like that. It's something I really like about the show, and I find it super funny because it's not even an actual fourth wall break. It's more so that in this world that's actually real, and that's how we usually view things in gaming. So they kind of go side by side instead. But anyway, I really enjoyed the fact that he actually had everyone doing things and being a part of the fight rather than just taking it on himself. But once everything is under more control, he does go forward. He counts down as though it's going to take 10 seconds to defeat the source of the problem, but he ultimately ends up doing it in 7 because of course he does. Gobrou is a total show-off, and I thought that was a really fun way to wrap things up. And then we got the sequence with the kobolds and the discussion I talked about earlier. But it really does look like Gobrou's little group of people are growing, and one thing that I wanted to mention that I haven't yet is that Gobrou seems to be aware now of the fact that his interactions with these people and his impact on this group seems to be, at least in part, the catalyst of what is making it grow and what is making different people evolve and obtain skills and stuff. And I think it's cool that he is aware of the fact that he is helping these people, so long as he doesn't let it go to his head. We'll see whether that happens, but Gobrou seems like he mostly has his head on his shoulders, and he seems to strike a good balance between being reasonable and fair when he can, and being an absolute goblin badass, dispersing justice when he must. So we'll have to see what happens with his character as the show progresses, and what other things will happen to the people he surrounds himself with. But it looks like we are on the brink of a human-elf war, and we'll have to see just how that is going to impact the goblins going forward. So, what did you guys think of this episode? Did you enjoy the more broken down structure and the way that they helped a lot of characters obtain abilities that'll probably become useful going forward? Do you prefer it more when the episodes are broken more into like a 2-piece format like the last couple have been, where we're getting a couple of shorter stories? Or do you wish that this show would actually focus in on a more normal narrative? Did any of the characters grab your interest? Did you like any of the skills Gobrou grabbed? Whatever you'd like to chat about, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, so feel free to leave them there. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!